Today I'm going to talk about Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Nice Guys, two Shane Black films from the 2000s that were made in between. In between this, he made like Iron Man 3, and after them, he made the Predator. So these films do not do well, these little like detective stories. So then he goes off and makes a more mainstream film. I prefer these are better films. Everyone knows they're better films, but for some reason they just don't seem to connect. Even though they're acknowledged as much better films. It's just one of those things. So then he just had to go off and save his career again. Now Shane Black started out as a writer. I mean, he wrote Lethal Weapon, he wrote Last Boy Scout, he wrote The Long Kiss Goodnight. He co-wrote Last Action Hero, but it's kind of disowned it because it was such a mess, and a lot of its work got rewritten, and he wasn't very happy with what had happened with it. But I mean, he is a distinctive writer. I mean, if you look at all these films, they do have a kind of common theme of like dysfunctional families, difficult characters trying to deal with the past. He is a writer who likes the kind of noirish tropes of damaged people trying to survive in a world that doesn't really care, really, and there's usually a conspiracy involved, and they have to try and prove themselves to themselves and to the world. So yeah, I mean, he has a certain trope, but he does it well, and he's not in your face every year doing the same film, so it works pretty good. And as he's moved on, he's developed into a writer who's seems to be much more interested in the characters and much less interested in the tropey suspense stuff. The suspense stuff is there to do more character. So he's become a much more character-based director. So even a film like The Predator, which had a flawed premise and had a massive reshoot for the final third, and there's a lot of mistakes in that film. You can see him try to do some character-based stuff with the various soldiers who are stuck in this situation they didn't want. But it was kind of hatchet jobbed by the studio. Iron Man 3 is actually manages to do a lot of character stuff before we get to the big bad villain at the end. So I mean, it's a kind of more humanistic version of a superhero film. Where Iron Man doesn't have an Iron Man suit for a good half the film. He has to rely on his wits. So I really like Iron Man 3. I especially like the Mandarin twist because so many fanboys start crying about it. It's hilarious. It's just so funny. But his best stuff is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and Nice Guys. These are wonderful films. These are really well made pieces of entertainment with a lot of depth below the surface. Because they are about the idea of these kind of people who are living very flawed lives and have ideals and dreams that haven't really lived up to. But it places that at the forefront. And it places dialogue at the forefront and the character interaction at the forefront. And even when there's an action beat, it's usually there to have the character give the character like a melodramatic moment where they have to prove themselves to themselves. Usually it's funny. It's never really used as something that has to be there every 10 minutes. So Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was a film made by Shane Black as a kind of career rebirth. He'd been a big screenwriter for a while. The last film he'd written hadn't done well. It disappeared for a bit and then he came back with this. And he got the backing of Joel Silver, who produced some of his films. And he made this film for like $15 million in 2000s, which was not that much money. They hired Robert Downey Jr., who was just coming off his many excesses he did. This is when he just sobered up, so he was starting to come back as an actor and try to prove himself as trustworthy and not someone who's going to flake out and take lots of drugs. So this was just as he was really doing his comeback before he became Iron Man and become really successful. I mean, one of the reasons Shane Black did Iron Man 3 is because his relationship from this film with Robert Downey Jr., because they trusted each other. So this was a big important thing for both Shane Black and Robert Downey Jr. This was important for both of them to come back because they were viewed as talents who had not lived up to the potential, really. And they brought in Val Kilmer, who's also another talent who had not lived up to potential. So it was like a lot of actors and people behind the scenes who needed to prove themselves. I mean, it was coming off at the same time Joe Silver just came off the Matrix films and V for Vendetta, so he was big at the time, so he could get people to give them a lot of money to make this film. You know, they trusted him to produce a film. But like at this level, even though they knew it was probably not going to be a big hit, but he'd made enough money for them that it could still justify it. So the film was made, came out, and did nothing. Nobody was interested in it. But it's hit video, and that's something everyone's interested because everyone saw it. I actually saw it in the cinema because it's one of those films in Britain that got a good. I think by the time it coming out in America, and people said, I heard that was good, and then it was gone. By the time it got to Britain, the hype had actually hit that this was actually good. So by the time it hit Britain, I knew that this was a film to go see. So I think it was actually one of those things that was actually better to be in the UK. I mean, it's something that similar happened to Donnie Darko, where by the time it got to us, we knew it had a good reputation. But when it was released in America, no one knew about it at the end. So it actually kind of worked out well to be in Europe, to have a slight delay for the critical appreciation to have come out. So it came out, no one saw it, then hit video and everyone saw it. And it became this thing that Robert Downey Jr. was back, and Shane Black was back, and everyone, you know, a lot of talented people were now actually worthwhile coming back and seeing the stuff. And that kind of helped get Downey Jr. into like Zodiac and into Iron Man. So it really did help his career. And he has said, I think, in the past that this is probably the best film. It is a wonderful film because it is about people who are so self-destructive. I mean, he plays Harry Lockhart, a guy who wanted to be a magician, turned into a petty thief, and suddenly gets caught up in this weird movie sting where does a great audition for something by mistake. He actually gets into this audition room while he's running to the police for a robbery, and because his pal had been shot at the time, he was upset and he gave an amazing audition. So they suddenly say, "Well, this amazing newcomer." So he's taken out to LA and given private eye lessons, which way he meets Gay Perry, played by Val Kilmer, who's this gay detective who's very no nonsense. And as they suddenly, as they're doing the detective lessons, they suddenly get stuck into this plot, this weird conspiracy that no one's quite sure if it's a conspiracy or not for half the film because everyone thinks it's a bit weird, but let's not talk about it. Or suddenly it was like, oh, we're dealing with these people who are after us, we better just back off and keep a distance. So it's a really interesting look at the private detective story because they do not want to be involved for a lot of the film. They do not want to get caught up in this investigation. They'd rather just like, this is dangerous, just not deal with it. And then between that, Harry meets up this girl played by Michelle Monaghan who he knew as a kid and he had a crush on. She disappeared and he basically meets up with her again in LA. She's an aspiring actress who hasn't made it. He's a has-been petty thief who hasn't made it and he's not that bright a lot of the time. He makes a lot of silly mistakes. So it's a bunch of characters orbiting each other and making horrible mistakes. But that's the charm of the film. The charm of the film is the character interaction. There is a conspiracy, it does get elevated, and it does lead to some bizarre scenes of detection and bizarre action scenes that are very strange, that I'm not going to talk about. Even though the film's been out for 15 years, it's not a film that's easily seen. It's not a film that everyone knows about. It's one of those weird films that are very culty. It was big at its time. When it hit Britain, a lot of people saw it because we heard about it. And then it kind of fell away after Iron Man came out. And it was like, everyone talks about Iron Man as Robert Downey Jr., not this. So if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to ruin it. I'm just trying to describe what the general premise is and what the atmosphere is. Because it is about the characters. That's what Shane Black's about. It's about weird characters. Like when he was younger, he had a lot of action scenes with the characters, but it was still weird characters. Remember Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson's character is a suicidal cop, Vietnam veteran. He is a lunatic. In Last Boy Scout, Bruce Willis is an ex-service agent who's now a PI and who's an alcoholic and his wife hates him. It's like Shane Black writes dysfunctional characters. Even Long Kiss Goodnight, he made a female character who's an ex-assassin who's has amnesia and is now thinks she's a housewife, and it's about the two merging the two different personalities, and it's all about weird dysfunctions within a character, even though they're action movies. I mean, he invented a lot of the tropes that would actually go on to like Bourne Identity and stuff. Like Bourne Identity is basically Long Kiss Goodnight with a male lead. You know, even though it's based on a novel, if you watch Long Kiss Goodnight and watch Bourne Identity and the Bourne series, they took a lot from that film. They even brought in Brian Cox as one of the villains. You know, it's so he's a very influential director and writer. And this film hasn't been ripped off as much because it's hard to do because it's a mixture of weird character beats, weird motivations of characters who don't quite know themselves and who can be petty, can be stupid, can act in very self-destructive ways, which is hard to write, hard to pull off. And because this film does it so well, and it jumps between different genres so well, that it's very uniquely Shane Black, and it's very hard for someone else to do it. So no one tries. It was one of the things. It's a very mad film, but no one's going to try and do this. It didn't make much money. Even Shane Black has problems getting these films made, even though those are the films he should be making. It's one of those things that just Netflix give him money every year or two and let him make these kind of films. These are kind of... It's perfect for Netflix. It's like, these kind of character-based films are perfect for Netflix. Just give him money and let him do stuff. But this was kind of like a perfect film for his career. I mean, it's probably his best film he's ever been involved with. But The Nice Guys is also a very good film. The Nice Guys is only flawed compared to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I think, hits more notes perfectly than Nice Guys. Nice Guys is still excellent. But it's a bit more cartoonish, really, in comparison. But it's still a wonderful film on its own. The Nice Guys is about a private detective played by Ryan Gosling who is doing all of these like CD cases for these old folk who have forgotten that their husbands have died. And he's making money off people who have money and are away in the head. He used to be a good detective, but his wife died. He's bringing up his daughter. He's trying to make a living. He's a horrible alcohol problem. You know, he's a complete alcoholic. Like, Shane Black's written characters who like to drink, like in Lethal Weapon and Last Boy Scout. This character is well beyond their kind of level of alcoholism into unable to function during action scenes level. He teams up with Russell Crowe's character, who is a guy who would like to be a PI, but he's actually just a enforcer guy who goes out and beats people up for money. So if someone's daughter has seen some seedy guy, he goes and beats the seedy guy up. He's basically a guy who is good with his fists and would like to be better than he is. So these two guys who are tumbling down towards oblivion in their lives, it's just nothing's happened for them, get caught up in this sort of conspiracy slowly but surely. It slowly develops as a conspiracy. Ryan Gosling is asked to find this woman's granddaughter who's partly dead, but she says she's not dead. Russell Crowe's character has to find this woman who he's worked for, and there's a lot of complications because she's a daughter of someone important, and it's a bunch of characters. They have to find this woman who is a key to a murder and all these deaths. But it's hard to explain because the plot is kind of weird. The plot, sort of like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, it starts and stops, and it's all about character beats. It's not, the plot's there, but it's not really, it's to get into the next character beat, really. And that's what works about the film. Again, it is a bit broader than Kiss Kiss Bang Bang because the Ryan Gosling character is really funny, but is very much a joke for the first half of the film until you find out why he is the way he is and what caused him to be this way. Then he becomes a much more tragic character. You start to see why he's so damaged. But the first half, they have a lot of fun with his dysfunctionality and like his uselessness. But as the film goes on, you start to see he actually is a lot smarter than he looks. But he still has flaws that can be exploited. And Russell Crowe's character is a bit more on his. He's a bit more realistic than Ryan Gosling's character is. He can spot more obvious things and see what the problems are. And just watching these two interact, a kind of more realistic person or a dysfunctional person, trying to figure out, is there a mystery? Should they be following this mystery? Why are people trying to beat them up? Then why are people trying to kill them? And what the hell is going on with this porn actress and who seems to be who's connected to the law, but also is being targeted by assassins. And it's all this weird thing. I try to work out what the hell's going on. Like, is there something interesting there? Is it going to get them killed? And of course, his daughter, Ryan Gosling's daughter, gets caught up in the whole thing as well. Just like Bruce Willis's daughter got caught up in Last Boy Scout. It's a trope that Black likes, but it's actually a good trope. He's very good with that kind of trope. He actually is good at writing young female characters who have issues with their parents, and watching the parents try to deal with their mistakes to their daughter is actually something he's good at. He's really has a lot of skill at this kind of thing. But it is about these characters. It is about them trying to work everything out. What's good with Black though is he's very good with actors. He gives them space. Like, he doesn't overcut his scenes. And he gives them space to interact within the scenes and not cover it. He doesn't cover it like a TV show in any way. He's good with covering it with some sort of mood and creating a mood for the film and a style for the film. But he knows to give the actors space to try things out, and he writes good dialogue for them, and he writes good characters for them. But then he lets them interact and try things. And it really works because in his films, even in The Predator, the actors have a good time. You can tell them having a good time with this film, even though it's a film that's not working, because he gives the actors stuff to do. He likes weird character beats. He likes characters with weird motivations and weird, he likes character actors. I mean, he makes his films where the leads are character actors, and the leads are the characters in the leads are character actor kind of parts. They're not movie star parts. That's why movie stars like to work with his stuff, because he writes the parts like a character actor part. That's just what he does. He extends what would be a smaller part into the main part, and he gets rid of the boring lead man thing. And as he's going on, he's actually expanded that to make the narrative be less important than the character beats, which bites some when it comes to box office, really, because people like the films, but they all see them later. And then sometimes, even when you first see the film, it's a good film, but you really appreciate 2 or 3 film viewings down the line when you get all the nuances. And it's just that he's a maturing artist. He's really is one of the best mainstream writer directors we've got just now. I mean, his films are not massively deep, but he does them so well. And he really is one of the best modern writer directors. And he's far less self-indulgent than Tarantino. His films come in at a much shorter running time. I would take both these films over The Last Changes of Tarantino easily. They're so much better. They're so much more enjoyable. They're so much more rewatchable and less self-indulgent and less look at me type of thing. It just is that they're just more interesting films, and you like the characters more because the characters seem deeper and more nuanced and odder. So these are really, really good films. I'm trying to avoid giving plot, even though they are older films. They're no longer new films. They are films that are underseen, so you might have missed them if you're watching the video and be like, okay, I should probably try and catch this one. They are really worth seeing because they are unusual. They do have, I mean, sometimes they don't even always. Some of the jokes are funny in an obvious way, and some of the jokes are really subtly funny. I mean, they vary the type of humour. I mean, Ryan Gosling in this one has a lot of slapstick stuff, and at times he's completely channeling Luke Costello in some of his reactions, but it works. It just works the character, and it's a great move. But it's like it's really weird because obviously Shane Black lets actors go and lets them do things and try things out, and that's the kind of joy of his films. Because you see a lot of actors in his films, that's the best they are in their careers. They are. I mean, Russell Crowe in this one is probably one of his best performances. Same with Ryan Gosling. In Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, all the lead actors, that's probably the best stuff, or one of the best things I've done. It's just he's very good with writing characters and letting actors really get their teeth into them. So I'd highly recommend these two films. I hope I've encouraged you to go see them. These are wonderful films. So I'll be back soon with some more, but I hope you enjoyed this.